At the turn of the century, almost all the great painters of both the older and the younger generation felt the impact of what was then called modern. It was not, however, the wind blowing in Van Gogh's paintings, nor a Gauguin or a Seurat's sense for the curve, nor the simplified line of Toulouse-Lautrec's prints that defined the style of the time. It was in Prague, that strange city burning with colors, that the art of the curve was revived and achieved world renown. Louis Aragon. Ivančice in Moravia, a small town in the Czech Republic. Alphonse Marie Mucha, only son of André and Amalia Mucha, was born here on the 24th of July, 1860. Ivančice is the place to which his memories always took him back. He went to school there, worked as a recording clerk in the law court, sang in the church choir. The local church, where he spent so much time, exercised a deep influence on the child's imagination. The colors, the reflections, light, shade, the sound of the organ, every detail engraved itself deeply on his memory. Mucha showed his artistic talent from his earliest years. He was drawing before he learnt to walk, and very soon he began to dream of a career as a great painter. But in spite of all the fame that was later to be his, at heart he always remained that young boy from Ivančice. In the later decades of the 19th century, the wealth of all the Austro-Hungarian Empire flowed into Vienna. In 1879, the young Mucha went to work for a Viennese company which produced stage sets and curtains for the Ring Theatre. When the theatre burnt down, the company went bankrupt and Mucha left Vienna for Mikulov in southern Moravia, where he worked as a house painter and decorator. This was to prove one of the most important periods of his life. In the nearby village of Hrušovany, Count Kun Belassi had just finished building a little castle called Emmerhof after his wife. He asked Mucha to do the interior decoration. Unfortunately, Emmerhof suffered the same fate as the Viennese Ring Theatre. It burnt down completely, so that none of Mucha's beautiful wall paintings have come down to us. The castle of Gandeck in the Tyrol belonged to Count Kun's brother Egon, to whom the young Mucha was recommended after he had finished his work at Hrušovany. Here Mucha started to live the life of a young gentleman. Count Egon, himself an amateur painter, offered him not only walls to be covered by frescoes, he also provided paints, easels, and canvases. As well as decorating the castle, Mucha completed a portrait of the Countess, painted landscapes in the open air, and worked on his own compositions. Count Egon was so impressed that he sent Mucha to the academy in Munich. After passing an examination in figurative painting, Mucha was admitted to the last year but one. graduated from the academy after 2 years and was sent by the Count to study at the very heart of the artistic world, in Paris. When Alphonse arrived in Paris in autumn 1887, he had every reason to be happy. He had Czech friends, a scholarship which enabled him to live comfortably, and the audacity and confidence of youth. He rented a flat and a large studio, bought a top hat and elegant clothes, and entered the Académie Julian. With a monthly allowance of 200 francs, all of Paris was his. He met many prominent artists of the time, among them Paul Gauguin. Mucha subscribed to no particular school, he went his own way. He longed for his work to be shown in fashionable salons. He was attracted to historical paintings, something borne out by the titles of his works of the time. Nero watching Rome burning, Antony and Cleopatra, Pharaoh's daughter. Sadly, in early 1890, Count Egon stopped Mucha's scholarship, and the painter had to earn his own living. He sent his pictures to magazines, and soon obtained commissions for book illustrations too. Within 4 years, Mucha was an established illustrator and did not have to worry about money. However, nothing as yet pointed to his future role in the creation of Art Nouveau, or as it was also to be called, Style Mucha. He had no idea how close fame was and what it would bring with it. The fateful Christmas of 1894 approaches. Mucha is asked at very short notice to design a poster for a production of Gismonde for the famous Parisian actress Sarah Bernhardt. The poster appeared on the streets of Paris on the morning of January the 1st and caused an immediate sensation. Mucha became famous overnight. He proves, the critics pointed out, that lavish colours and far-fetched gestures are quite unnecessary. Mucha, with his brilliant white lithographs, has carried the day, others wrote. Sarah Bernhardt signed a contract with the young foreigner who had so uniquely captured her charm. From now on, Mucha's posters made an event out of every play in which she appeared. The posters outlived the dramas which they advertised, and in them, Sarah Bernhardt herself outlived her own legend. Mucha was now very famous. He moved into a new studio in 6 Val de Grace, which he furnished with Byzantine splendor. Instead of the small suitcase of his Mikulov days, the one suit and 2 pairs of shoes, there arrived draperies, carpets, oriental lamps and furniture of all periods. Those 10 years in Val de Grace were the climax of Mucha's life, both creatively and socially. He became a true master of the poster. Pursued by publishers, he produced large quantities of designs, which became a craze in Paris and swept the whole world. He drew one advertising poster after another. He painted calendars, designed biscuit tins, and decorative panneaux. A merry-go-round of commissions started. The year was 1900. At the turn of the century, Paris was gripped by preparations for the World Fair. By this time, Mucha's fame had reached its zenith. He designed the Pavilion of Man, which was to be one of the central pieces of the whole exhibition. For Mucha, however, the most important commission was that of decorating the pavilion of the newly annexed Bosnia. As he wrote later, "I would not have expected to find amongst the Balkan Slavs what I had been so intensively searching for. Onto my depiction of their history, I have projected the joys and sorrows of my own country and all the Slavs." The idea of the Slav epic came to his mind, and Mucha never gave it up to the end of his life. The Fouquet jewellery shop is undoubtedly amongst Mucha's greatest Art Nouveau achievements. The shop front, the interior decorations, the furniture, the jewels, everything was designed by Mucha himself. The shop, which opened in the Rue Royale in 1901, is considered a sensation even today. In the same period, his Documents décoratifs and later also Figures décoratives appeared, laying out his creed for the applied arts. In these works, Mucha brought the style of his time to its consummate expression. Besides working for Fouquet, Mucha was preparing decorations for a church in Jerusalem, including the beautiful picture known as the Madonna of the Lilies. Nevertheless, beneath the calm surface, Mucha was growing uneasy, plagued by conscience. "While I sit at a full dish, my nation languishes," he wrote in a letter. His decision to devote all his energies to working for his country turned to action in February 1904. He sailed for the United States, where by painting portraits of wealthy people, he planned to earn sufficient capital to start the Slav epic. This would be his gift to his homeland. Mucha's arrival in America was marked by banner headlines in newspapers and magazines. Up to a point, his hopes were fulfilled. He painted illustrations and portraits, but again he got caught up in the social whirl from which he had tried to escape in Paris. He was the central attraction at banquets and parties. He was invited to the White House. Sadly, nobody in America was interested in the faraway Slavs. In 1906, Mucha married his great love, Maria Chytilova, who at 24 was 20 years his junior. Her charming face appears in many of his pictures. She had come to Paris from the small Czech town of Chrudim to study painting. Mucha closed his Paris studio, and together they left for the US, where they stayed for several years. During his time in America, Mucha's commissions included the decoration of the German Theatre in New York and the portraits of many actresses, including Maud Adams, and Leslie Carter. However, it was his meeting with Charles Crane, millionaire, diplomat and political dreamer, which turned out to be a stroke of real good fortune. Mucha made portraits of both of his daughters, one as a picture a la Sargent, the other as an allegory of Slavia. In Crane, Mucha had found a kindred soul and the man who agreed to finance his Slav epic. When I was told at Christmas that there was a stocking also for me, I jumped in pain, believing they were giving me money, he wrote to Prague. It was not money, but the longed-for promise of a contract. In 1910, after 28 years, Alfons Mucha came back home. With his family, he settled in western Bohemia at the Chateau of Zbiroch, where he rented a flat and a large hall. Zbiroch suited him in every respect. Besides a large studio, there was an adjacent loggia above the rocks, where he photographed his models. In this chateau, Mucha spent the best time of his life. Mucha's daughter Yaroslava with Marie. Mucha's son Yeti. As soon as he got his advance payment, Mucha bought paints and brushes and began to sketch. The scope of the Slav epic would be immense. In 1910, Mucha was asked to participate in the interior decoration of the municipal house, undoubtedly amongst the most important buildings of this century in Prague. Its construction and decoration aroused patriotic feelings that brought together people who otherwise would not have collaborated at all, people of different generations and various artistic and intellectual currents. The Lord Mayor's Hall, where Mucha completed a magnificent painted ceiling and wall lunettes, is one of the most beautiful rooms. Through strength to freedom, through love to concord, so reads the inscription above the main entrance to the hall. This motto is the key to Mucha's concept of art. The hall is furnished with sumptuous draperies, rich ornaments and embroideries. It must have been a miraculous charge of energy, such as only happiness can give, that enabled Mucha, besides his work in the municipal house and on the Slav epic, to design a large number of commissions that serve as outstanding examples of his late posters. He drew posters for the choir of Moravian teachers, for the mass gathering of the national gymnastic organization Sokol, the regional exhibition in Ivančice, the lottery of the National Concord, and another showing the beautiful princess Hyacinth. In spite of this apparent idyll, Mucha was worried about his unfinished work, as World War I was drawing nearer. For the large canvases of the Slav epic, he found a shelter in the park of his chateau at Zbiroch. The year 1918 meant the end of the war and the establishment of an independent Czechoslovakia. Alfons's dream, so often debated with Crane, Masaryk and Wilson, had come true. Mucha was prepared to offer the liberated country all that was in his power. He designed practically everything for the new republic. first Czechoslovak banknotes, stamps, and medals. His beloved country was free at last. The political mission of the Slav epic was complete, and the work became purely a matter of art. While the Fouquet jewelry shop has been declared a chapel consecrated to the cult of women's ornamentation, the Slav epic could be called a temple of romantic patriotism. As early as 1900, in Paris, I set myself the task of devoting the second part of my life to work that would help to build a feeling of strong national consciousness in each one of us, Mucha declared. I'm convinced that the development of every nation can take place successfully only if it grows organically and continuously from the nation's very roots. It took him 18 years to complete the Slav epic, and he covered almost half a square kilometre of canvas with professional brilliance. The Slav epic is more than just 20 enormous canvases. It represents an innumerable quantity of sketches, photographs, and studies. Mucha went on several study trips, one of them a journey to Russia. When he came back, he painted the picture, The Abolition of Serfdom in Russia. The Brethren School in Ivančice shows Mucha's birthplace with the town walls and church tower of the time. The picture stresses the importance of education as a way of raising the ethical standards of the nation. As a patriot, Mucha dedicated almost half of the cycle to Czech history. Characteristically, however, he selected those moments that in one way or another were relevant to the history of Europe as a whole. In Mucha's concept, the Hussite movement represented for the Czech nation political and moral issues far exceeding its narrow religious content. The picture of Comenius is not some pompous tribute to a great compatriot. It is rather a meaningful symbol of the pain of exile, something of which Mucha had no experience of his own. Nevertheless, it was to become the lot of many Czech people. The Czech king and diplomat, George of Poděbrady, envisaging the principle of the present United Nations. Mucha's epic is a vast message, a message whose time is still to come. A prophetic message, if we're prepared to listen. Mucha directed his models very carefully, including their facial expressions, until they corresponded exactly to his wishes. Thus he worked as a painter and director at the same time. The pictures of the Slav epic display clearly the influence of the theatre. One single picture, the Pledge of the Young Patriots, remains, as if on purpose, unfinished. In 1919, Mucha exhibited the first 11 pictures of the Slav epic in the Prague Clementinum. 2 years later, they were shown in the Brooklyn Museum in New York. In September 1928, the epic was finally exhibited as a whole in Prague's new Trade Fair Palace and, in the presence of Charles Crane, given to the city of Prague and to the Czech nation. His work on the cycle did not, however, finish there. He continued to complete and correct some pictures until the very last days of his life. In St. Vitus's Cathedral in Prague Castle, we can find one of Mucha's late Art Nouveau works. In the left aisle stands the Archbishop's Chapel. Mucha designed its stained glass window in 1931. The work was sponsored by the insurance company Slavia and represents scenes from the lives of St. Cyril and Methodius. March the 15th, 1939, Hitler's army is occupying Prague. Mucha was amongst the first to be taken for questioning. He was allowed home afterwards, but his health was broken, and he died on the 14th of July, 1939, just 10 days before his 79th birthday. The aim of my work was never to destroy, but to build bridges. We must live in the hope that all mankind will become closer, which will be easier the better we get to know one another. I shall be happy if I am able to contribute my own small share to this understanding, at least for now, here in the Slavonic family. Black is the color of bondage. Blue is the past. Yellow, the joyous present. Orange, the glorious future.